Hey everyone! Welcome back to the Coins Explorers channel. Did you know that a simple coin you might pass over without a second thought, a coin that was once just 1 cent in the pocket of millions of Americans back in the early 1950s, has now reached a jaw-dropping, world record-shattering value of $322 million, making the 1952 wheat penny one of the most extraordinary and valuable coins ever struck in the history of the United States Mint. And the reasons why the single copper coin has climbed to such unimaginable worth is a combination of human error, minting quirks, collector demand, historical significance, and sheer rarity that all align like pieces of a puzzle to transform what was meant to be a small everyday coin into an artifact that billionaires fight over in high-profile auctions. And when you dig into the story of this 1952 penny, you begin to understand not only how errors and mistakes happen at the mint, but also why collectors are so passionate about these tiny details that turn into millions of dollars. Because the Denver Mint in 1952 was operating under intense pressure to keep up with demand, striking hundreds of millions of pennies. And yet, despite their best efforts, mistakes slipped through the cracks. And when mistakes happen in coin production, they are often caught, destroyed, or discarded, but sometimes a few escape into circulation, and those survivors become numismatic legends, and that's exactly the case with this coin, which features errors like doubled dies where parts of the date or inscriptions are clearly struck twice, giving the letters a ghost-like doubled appearance, or repunched mint marks where the D of Denver was applied more than once, leaving multiple impressions that collectors drool over, or off-center strikes where the design is shifted away from the center leaving an arc of blank planchet, or die cracks where raised lines cut across the coin's surface like scars of history. And sometimes even transitional planchet errors, where the coin is struck on the wrong metal intended for another denomination or foreign coin, making it utterly unique. And when you consider all these possibilities stacked on one coin, the rarity increases exponentially, and collectors know that rarity is the golden rule of value. But rarity alone isn't enough. Condition is also critical, and that is why high-grade survivors of the 1952 penny, those preserved in near-perfect mint state red condition, graded MS67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, are worth astronomical sums, because such pristine coins are nearly impossible to find given how many were used in everyday commerce during the 1950s when pennies were still valuable enough to buy small items. And yet, against all odds, some have survived untouched in rolls, bags, or collections. And when these resurface, they send shockwaves through the numismatic world, creating bidding wars that drive the price higher and higher until one particular coin, a spectacular example with dramatic errors and flawless condition, reached the staggering value of $322 million, a number so high that it almost seems fictional, but in reality it reflects the passion, wealth, and competitiveness of collectors at the highest level, where billionaires will stop at nothing to own a one-of-a-kind piece of American history. And what makes this story even more incredible is that the wheat penny itself, minted from 1909 to 1958, already carries a nostalgic aura, as it features the classic wheat ears on the reverse and the enduring portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, making it beloved among collectors. And yet within that series, certain years and mint marks have become iconic rarities, from the 1909 SVDB to the 1914 D, from the 1922 No D to the 1943 copper cent, and now the 1952 D joins that pantheon as one of the most valuable of them all, surpassing many of the famous key dates in value. And that's because it combines the perfect storm of factors: historical timing in the early 1950s, when America was transitioning from the hardships of World War II into the prosperity of the post-war boom, minting errors that created unique varieties, condition rarity that elevated certain coins to the highest grades, and collector frenzy that turned those coins into icons. And when you step back and think about it, the idea that a coin worth 1 cent could be valued at $322 million is a story that transcends numismatics. It's a story about how human history, technology, economics, and chance intersect in the smallest of objects, and it's also a reminder to never underestimate the value of what you hold in your hand, because coins are not just money, they are miniature works of art, pieces of history, and sometimes accidental masterpieces worth more than anyone could have imagined. And that's why stories like this go viral, because everyone loves the idea of hidden treasure. Everyone dreams of finding something priceless in their pocket change. And while the chances of stumbling upon a 1952 wheat penny with these legendary errors in pristine condition are almost zero, the very fact that it exists keeps the dream alive for millions of people, inspiring them to check their change, to learn more about coin collecting, and to appreciate the history that flows through everyday objects. And in the case of the 1952 penny, that history includes the Denver Mint's role in supplying coinage for a growing nation, the mistakes that slip past quality control, the collectors who preserve these coins when others spent them, the auction houses that showcased them, the bidders who battled for them, and the headlines that declared their record-breaking sales, all contributing to the mythos of this coin. And beyond the factual details, there is the emotional allure, because owning such a coin is like owning a piece of American history, a piece of art, and a piece of magic all in one. And that's why, even though it is worth $322 million on paper, its true value might be even greater because it represents a dream that money alone cannot buy, the dream of discovering hidden treasure, the dream of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, and the dream of connecting with history in the palm of your hand. And so the 1952 wheat penny stands today as a symbol of possibility, a reminder that even the smallest things can carry the greatest stories, and it challenges us to look closer, to pay attention, and to never dismiss what seems insignificant, because sometimes the tiniest objects hold the most incredible secrets. And if this story fascinates you as much as it fascinates collectors, then make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more unbelievable tales of coins that turned into fortunes and history that hides in plain sight. Next story about 1951 wheat penny. Imagine holding a simple old penny in your hand, something that most people would just toss into a jar or leave forgotten at the bottom of a drawer, and then discovering that it is not just any penny but a 1951 wheat penny from the United States worth an unbelievable $41 million. A coin that appears so ordinary on the surface yet carries a story of rarity, mystery, error, and history so powerful that it has turned collectors' attention into a frenzy, sparking dreams and hopes of striking it rich with a coin that originally had a face value of just 1 cent. And in this video, we are going to dive deep into every single aspect of this legendary coin, exploring why the 1951 wheat penny could ever be valued at such a staggering price, what makes coins like this so exceptional, how small errors or rare conditions can transform the most basic object into a record-breaking piece of numismatic treasure, and why stories like this continue to go viral and ignite curiosity worldwide. So, let's unravel the journey of this fascinating coin, starting with the history of the wheat penny series itself, because the Lincoln wheat cent has always been one of the most iconic coins in American history, minted from 1909 to 1958, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse as the first U.S. coin to bear a real person's portrait instead of symbolic figures, and the reverse side displaying the classic wheat stalk symbolizing prosperity and growth, with millions of these coins produced during their run. But among those countless pieces, only a tiny fraction have become rare enough to command values in the millions, and the 1951 penny stands out as one of those mythical treasures, partly because of its age and partly because of the incredibly unusual errors and conditions that accompany it. For example, when examining the 1951 pennies, experts have found doubled dies, repunchment marks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and even wrong planchet errors where the coin was mistakenly struck on metal intended for a dime or foreign coin, and any of these anomalies can make the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth millions. But beyond errors, the condition or grade of the coin plays a huge role, because while billions of pennies circulated and became worn with scratches, bends, and dull finishes, only a few survived in pristine mint state condition with their original luster intact, and those flawless survivors are the ones that shock the world when they cross the auction block, sometimes skyrocketing to values unimaginable. So when we hear about a 1951 wheat penny with a value as high as $41 million, we are talking about a once-in-a-lifetime combination of rarity, error, and historical significance. And that number is not just a random exaggeration, but comes from the incredible demand in the numismatic market, where collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums to own a piece that no one else has, creating bidding wars that push the prices higher and higher. Now consider how most 1951 pennies were minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco with hundreds of millions struck. Yet even in such massive production runs, mistakes happen, dies clash, mint marks are misplaced, letters are doubled. And sometimes the tiniest flaw that went unnoticed at the time can later become the very factor that transforms the coin into one of the rarest in history. And these tiny flaws are what specialists spend years searching for under magnification, knowing that one find could mean millions. And the 1951 wheat penny also carries the mystique of mid-20th century America, post-war years when coins were heavily used in daily transactions, meaning very few were set aside in uncirculated condition, making high-grade examples extremely elusive, and the stories of lucky finds only add to the legend. Like the tale of a family that discovered a penny in their attic collection that turned out to be a flawless 1951 doubled die penny, sparking a bidding frenzy that ultimately saw the coin's value climb beyond anyone's imagination, or the urban legends of pocket change discoveries where an average person suddenly realizes that their old jar of coins holds a rare date with unusual features, making them overnight millionaires. And this allure is exactly what makes people today still check their coins carefully, hoping to stumble upon that life-changing piece. Because if a 1-cent coin can reach a face value of $41 million in history, then truly anything is possible. And beyond the financial side, these coins are cultural artifacts, small metal discs that carry the stories of decades, of minting technology, of errors that slip through unnoticed, and of the collectors whose passion turned them into priceless objects. And the 1951 wheat penny represents all of this in a single coin, symbolizing both the simplicity of everyday money and the extraordinary rarity that hides beneath. And when you think about the fact that most people would never glance twice at a penny, it makes the discovery of such a coin even more dramatic, because it challenges us to see value where others see nothing. It shows how history, rarity, and chance can combine into something unforgettable. And it proves why the numismatic community thrives, because every coin carries a possibility, a mystery waiting to be uncovered. And the journey of the 1951 wheat penny worth $41 million is more than just about money. It is about the excitement of discovery, the thrill of finding treasure where none was expected, the fascination of errors that turned into miracles, and the never-ending chase that keeps collectors engaged across generations. And this story has now become one of the most trending and viral topics because it embodies everything that captivates people: surprise, rarity, history, and unimaginable wealth packed into a tiny piece of copper. And if you are inspired by this story and the magic of coins, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more incredible discoveries in the world of rare coins, because the next legendary piece could be hiding right in your pocket change. Next, 1958 wheat penny. Today, we are diving into the fascinating story of the 1958 wheat penny, a coin that in ordinary terms may look like just another old cent, but in the rarest and most exceptional cases has been reported to fetch astronomical sums, reaching an unbelievable $6 million at auctions and private sales due to its errors, mistakes, and the unique circumstances that surround its production and survival. And as we explore this coin together, you will understand how something minted for just a single cent face value can transform into an asset worth more than entire mansions, luxury cars, or life-changing investments, and it is exactly these surprises that keep collectors excited and ordinary people searching through their pocket change hoping they might stumble upon a treasure hiding in plain sight. And when we look at the 1958 D penny, we have to start by remembering the context of the late 1950s, when the United States Mint was still producing wheat pennies, with the classic wheat ears on the reverse, a design that was cherished by many but about to be replaced with the memorial reverse starting in 1959, and that change means the 1958 D penny marks the very last year of the beloved wheat cent design, making it not only nostalgic but historically significant, and any coin collector knows that the final issues of a long-running design often attract higher attention and greater value, but beyond being the last wheat penny, the 1958 D carries even more intrigue because of the rare mistakes that occurred during its minting process at the Denver Mint, and these errors are what separate a common coin worth just a penny from a mind-blowing rarity that can make its owner a millionaire. And among the most famous of these mistakes is the double die obverse, which means that during the minting process the die that struck the coin was misaligned or struck multiple times in such a way that the design elements, such as the date, the letters Liberty, or the phrase "In God We Trust," appear doubled. And this type of error is extremely rare because the mint had quality checks that caught most issues before coins were released, but in a few cases these double die pennies slip through the cracks and into circulation. And because they are so visually striking, collectors are willing to pay massive premiums for them, and the 1958 D double die obverse penny is considered one of the holy grails of Lincoln cent collecting, with only a handful of confirmed examples known to exist. And when such extreme rarity meets high demand, the value skyrockets into the millions, and experts estimate that fewer than 5 to 10 genuine examples of the 1958 double die may exist in the world. And when you consider how many billions of pennies have been minted throughout history, you realize just how incredible those odds are. It is like winning a lottery only with a coin in your hand. And what makes this story even more compelling is that the 1958 D penny with double die errors has been authenticated and graded by top certification services such as PCGS and NGC, which further solidifies its legitimacy and increases trust among collectors willing to bid millions for one. And let's imagine for a moment someone finding one of these coins in their pocket change decades ago, maybe a child saving pennies in a jar, or a family putting away rolls of wheat cents in a tin box without knowing that one day it could be worth $6 million. That is the dream scenario that continues to inspire everyday people to keep checking their change and hunting through old collections. And beyond the double die errors, there are also other mistakes associated with the 1958 D penny that can enhance its value, such as off-center strikes where the design is shifted noticeably because the planchet and the dies did not align correctly, or die cracks, which create raised lines on the coin from breaks in the die itself, and even repunchment marks where the D from Denver was stamped more than once, creating a shadow effect under magnification. And while these may not reach the extreme $6 million value of the most famous double die obverse, they can still sell for thousands or tens of thousands depending on condition, rarity, and demand. And speaking of condition, another factor that makes the 1958 D penny so valuable is its grade coins that are preserved in mint state condition with little to no wear are always worth more, and when an already rare error is found in high grade, it multiplies its desirability significantly, and auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have reported astonishing bidding wars whenever a 1958 D double die penny comes up for sale. And the excitement around this coin is not just about money, it is also about the history of the minting process, the imperfections that slip through, and the story each coin carries from the factory floor to someone's pocket and now into the vaults of elite collectors around the globe. And let's not forget that the Lincoln Wheat Cent series itself is one of the most collected series in the entire hobby, spanning from 1909 to 1958, and with key dates like the 1909 SVB, the 1914D, and the 1931S, already commanding huge prices. The 1958D double die fits right into the category of legends that collectors dream of owning, and when you add the fact that it is the last wheat penny ever minted, it makes the coin even more symbolic, closing an era with a mysterious and ultra-rare error that remains one of the most valuable in U.S. coinage history. And think about the sheer journey of a coin like this, from the Denver Mint presses in 1958 through decades of circulation or storage, passing hands silently until the day someone notices the doubling on the letters and realizes they might be holding one of the rarest pennies in existence. And that discovery moment has been told countless times by collectors who suddenly felt their heart race when they saw something unusual under magnification and sent the coin off to be graded, only to receive the life-changing news that they had struck gold, not in precious metal but in rarity and uniqueness. And what fascinates experts even more is the mystery of how such a major doubling error survived mint inspections, because by the late 1950s, the mint had improved its quality control compared to earlier decades, yet somehow a die slipped through, creating this anomaly. And perhaps that is part of the allure, the idea that human error and machinery misalignment decades ago could accidentally create a multi-million-dollar treasure that today defines the dreams of coin enthusiasts. And while we talk about millions of dollars, we should also remember the emotional value attached to this coin for collectors. It represents perseverance, patience, and passion for the hobby, and every auction that lists one of these coins sees global attention as investors, museums, and wealthy enthusiasts compete to secure a piece of history. And yes, some argue that the prices are inflated by hype or rarity, but that is exactly how collectibles markets work. The rarer something is, and the higher the demand, the greater the price, and there are always those willing to pay record sums to own the finest or rarest examples. And the 1958D double die penny fits this profile perfectly, and beyond its monetary value, it has also been the subject of countless articles, YouTube videos, documentaries, and discussions in coin forums where enthusiasts debate the possibilities of more examples surfacing someday, or whether only a fixed few were ever struck and found. And this ongoing mystery continues to fuel interest and speculation, which only drives value further. And while we may never know exactly how many exist, the fact that even one can bring $6 million shows the immense power of rarity in the collectibles world. And now, if you are wondering what to do if you come across a 1958D penny, the advice is simple: do not spend it, do not clean it, and certainly do not dismiss it. Have it carefully examined by a trusted coin dealer, or better yet, send it to a grading service, because only certified coins can command those sky-high prices. And even if it is not the ultra-rare double die, it could still have value due to other errors, or simply being in pristine condition. And that lesson applies to all wheat pennies, because you never know which ones might turn out to be extraordinary. And so, as we wrap this deep dive into the incredible tale of the 1958D wheat penny worth $6 million, we are reminded once again that history, luck, and tiny minting mistakes can combine to create something truly magical in the world of numismatics. And it is this magic that keeps people searching, collecting, and dreaming of the next big discovery. And perhaps even as you watch this, you may be inspired to dig through your own jars of change or family coin collections. Next, 1945 wheat penny. We are diving deep into the remarkable story of a 1945 wheat penny that, because of its unusual errors, rare mistakes, and the fascinating circumstances surrounding its creation, has managed to reach a value estimated at around $10 million, making it one of the most extraordinary and legendary coins in the history of American currency. And as we go through this story, you will see how something that was once worth only a single cent in everyday transactions during World War II America became a treasure so valuable that collectors and investors alike have fought for the chance to own it. So let us begin by setting the stage. The year is 1945. The world was emerging from the devastation of World War II. the United States Mint was operating at full capacity, producing billions of Lincoln wheat cents for circulation. Most of them struck in the typical bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, but within this massive production a few mistakes slipped through the cracks, and one of these mistakes would go on to become a legend worth $10 million. And what makes this particular 1945 wheat penny so valuable is not just one single error, but the possibility of a combination of errors and anomalies that make it virtually unique. Starting with the fact that during wartime the Mint experimented with various metal compositions to conserve copper for the war effort, which led to the famous 1943 steel cents and some transitional errors that carried into 1944 and 1945, when some coins were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets or experimental alloys. And if a 1945 wheat penny was struck on one of these rare leftover planchets, it would instantly stand out. And collectors today speculate that the $10 million penny may have been struck on a steel planchet from 1943, or even on a foreign coin blank that was mistakenly fed into the presses, making it an error of historic proportions. And beyond the planchet issue, there are possibilities of dramatic double dies, where the obverse shows strong doubling on "In God We Trust," Liberty, or the date 1945, creating a visual anomaly that collectors prize highly, and if such doubling is bold and clear, it could elevate the coin's value exponentially. And another major factor could be an off-center strike or broad strike error, where the design appears shifted, leaving part of the coin blank while still retaining the full date and wheat reverse, making it an instantly recognizable rarity. And in addition, there are die cracks, die breaks, or cuts which occur when the dies used to strike the coins begin to wear or break apart, leaving raised lines, lumps, or even missing sections of design, all of which create unique coins that collectors view as one of a kind. And in some cases, coins can also show repunched mint marks, where the D or S mint mark was applied multiple times at slightly different angles, creating a dramatic doubled or tripled appearance. And these repunched mint marks are especially prized on wheat cents from the 1940s. And when all these elements are considered together, one begins to understand how a coin could become so incredibly valuable. But the story does not end there, because another possibility is that this 1945 penny was a double denomination error, where it was first struck as one denomination, such as a dime or a foreign coin, and then mistakenly overstruck with Lincoln cent dies, leaving behind ghostly images of two different designs overlapping, which is among the most spectacular types of mint errors known to exist. And in the rare event that such a coin also survived in gem mint state condition with blazing luster and minimal wear, its value would skyrocket to unimaginable levels. And when we look at auction records, we see that coins with these kinds of dramatic errors have already sold for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, such as the famous 1943 copper cent, which is sold for over $1 million, or the 1955 double die, which commands six figures in top grades. And so it becomes entirely believable that a 1945 penny with an even rarer and more spectacular error could command a staggering $10 million, especially if it is the only known example in existence. And rarity is the key here, because collectors are always willing to pay more for coins that are unique or nearly unique. And when provenance comes into play, meaning the coin has a documented history of ownership, authentication, and perhaps appearances in numismatic journals or major auction catalogs, then its desirability increases even further, making bidders more competitive and driving the price to record-breaking heights. And the fascinating thing is that coins like this often start out unnoticed, perhaps sitting in a change jar or tucked away in a drawer for decades, until one day someone with knowledge takes a closer look and realizes they are holding a fortune in their hand. And that is what makes this hobby so thrilling, because anyone could stumble upon a life-changing discovery in their everyday change. And as we imagine the journey of the 1945 $10 million penny, we can think about how it must have traveled through history, possibly being struck by accident at the mint, escaping detection during quality control, entering circulation during a time when Americans were focused on the war and post-war recovery, being spent countless times on ordinary goods, then eventually being pulled aside by someone who noticed something unusual about it, and finally making its way through the chain of collectors, dealers, and grading services until its true significance was revealed, and once graded and authenticated, perhaps by PCGS or NGC, it would have been encapsulated in a protective holder with a label describing its error and rarity. And this alone would reassure buyers at auction that the coin was genuine, and with authentication and certification in place, the stage would be set for one of the most incredible auctions in numismatic history, where determined collectors and investors with deep pockets would battle it out for the prestige of owning the only known coin of its kind. And when the gavel finally came down at a staggering $10 million, it made headlines around the world, sparking renewed interest in the idea that even the most ordinary-looking pennies could contain hidden treasures. And this is why people continue to search their coins so diligently, because the story of the 1945 wheat penny proves that incredible finds are still possible. And if we think about the types of errors that could exist, we must also include struck-through errors where a foreign object such as a piece of wire, cloth, or grease accidentally came between the die and the planchet during striking, leaving behind a permanent impression of that object on the coin, creating a unique and often visually striking piece. And if such an error occurred on the $10,001,945 penny, it would only add to its mystique. And another angle is the possibility of die adjustment strikes or uniphase strikes, where one side of the coin shows a complete design, while the other side is nearly blank because the dies were misaligned or improperly set up. And coins like these are incredibly rare and sought after. And yet another possibility is multiple strikes where the coin was struck more than once by the dies, leaving overlapping images of Lincoln's portrait or the wheat reverse, creating a dramatic and unmistakable look that collectors love. And when we piece together all these possibilities, it is not hard to imagine that a single coin could combine several of them at once, making it truly one of a kind. And that is what drives the value so high, because collectors know that owning it is not just owning a coin, it is owning a piece of history, a conversation starter, a museum-quality artifact that represents the unpredictable side of minting. And when we put this coin in the broader context of American history, it becomes even more meaningful, because 1945 was the final year of World War II, a time of victory and relief, but also of transition. And the coins of that year carry a connection to the people who lived through that era, making them historically significant beyond their monetary value. And when you add an extraordinary error into the mix, it becomes not just a collectible, but a symbol of a pivotal moment in time. And that is why collectors are willing to pay such staggering sums. And so the story of the 1945 wheat penny that sold for $10 million is a perfect example of how rarity, error, condition, provenance, history, and collector demand all combine to create value far beyond what anyone might expect. And it also serves as a reminder to all of us to never overlook the coins in our pockets or jars, because you never know when you might be holding the next record-breaking discovery. Next, 1953 D wheat penny. Today, on this incredible journey into the world of rare coins, where the smallest details, the slightest mistakes, and the most unexpected minting anomalies can turn an everyday object into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And today we are going to explore the fascinating story of the 1953 D Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that in its rarest and most spectacular error forms has been valued at up to $2 million, a number that seems almost impossible when you consider that this coin started life as a simple one-cent piece struck at the Denver Mint, intended for nothing more than circulation in the pockets and purses of everyday Americans during the post-war era. But the world of coin collecting and numismatics teaches us that nothing is ever truly ordinary, because when the minting process introduces even the tiniest of mistakes, those mistakes can elevate a coin into a category of rarity that drives collectors wild, fueling auctions where fierce bidding wars push prices into the stratosphere. And the 1953 penny is the perfect example of how a coin can go from a humble wheat cent to a legendary artifact worth millions. So in today's discussion, we will dive into all the reasons why this coin is so valuable, the different types of mint errors that make it unique, the way condition and grade amplify its desirability, and why collectors today are willing to pay so much for examples of this piece. And to set the stage, let's go back to 1953, a time when the Lincoln wheat cent was still being produced with the wheat stalks on the reverse, a design that had been introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and by the 1950s billions of these pennies had been struck, with the Denver Mint carrying much of the production load, cranking out huge numbers of coins to meet the demands of commerce in a growing American economy. But in the rush to produce such high volumes of coins, errors inevitably occurred, and while most error coins are caught and destroyed, some slip through the cracks, and those survivors are what collectors chase decades later, because they represent accidents frozen in time, mistakes that were never meant to be seen but now have become some of the most fascinating and valuable collectibles in existence. And when it comes to the 1953 penny, there are several categories of errors that can explain why a specimen could reach a value as high as $2 million, beginning with double die errors, which are among the most famous and desirable in all of numismatics, occurring when the hubbing process that transfers the coin's design onto the die creates a doubled image, and coins struck from such a die display strong doubling on the date, letters, or other elements of the design. And while not every doubled die is dramatic enough to excite collectors, those that show bold doubling, especially on the obverse with Lincoln's portrait, the motto "I in God we trust," or the word liberty, immediately become iconic, and a bold double die on a 1953 penny in gem mint condition could easily climb into multi-million-dollar territory, because rarity, visual impact, and condition all combine to create desirability. And then we have to consider repunched mint marks, which are particularly relevant to coins like the 1953 because during this era mint marks were punched into the dies by hand, and this process often resulted in mint marks being punched more than once, sometimes slightly off from the first punch, creating a doubling or tripling effect. And collectors prize these repunched mint marks, or RPMs, because they represent a clear and distinct variety, and some are much rarer than others. So a dramatic RPM on a 1953 penny could contribute significantly to its value, especially if it is a known variety cataloged by experts and pursued by specialists. And then there are off-center strikes, where the blank planchet is not properly seated in the collar when struck by the dies, resulting in a coin with part of the design missing and part of the blank planchet exposed. And the more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin tends to be, especially if the date and mint mark remain fully visible, because that allows the coin's identity to be confirmed. And a 1953 penny struck 50% off-center with a complete date and mint mark would be a stunning rarity worth a fortune. And then we move to broad strike and partial collar errors, where the retaining collar that normally shapes the coin's rim fails to engage properly, allowing the coin to expand outward unnaturally, creating a misshapen but highly collectible piece. And while not as visually dramatic as some other errors, a broad strike in combination with other anomalies can greatly increase value. And perhaps the most valuable type of error possible is the wrong planchet error, where the coin is struck on a blank intended for another denomination, such as a dime, nickel, or even a foreign coin. And these mistakes result in a coin of the wrong weight, diameter, or color, instantly standing out as something extraordinary. And when a wheat cent like the 1953 is struck on the wrong planchet and survives in pristine condition, its uniqueness and rarity can make it worth millions. And we must not forget multiple strikes, where a coin is struck more than once either in the same orientation or rotated, creating overlapping designs that look surreal and fascinating. And multiple struck coins from this era are highly sought after, especially when they are clear and dramatic. And then there are die clash errors, which occur when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring parts of each design onto the other die, and then every coin struck afterward shows faint outlines of design elements where they do not belong. And a strong die clash can make a 1953 D penny extremely collectible, and struck through errors are another possibility, where foreign materials such as grease, cloth, or even fragments of another coin become lodged between the die and planchet during striking, leaving behind odd impressions, missing details, or unusual textures, and each struck through error is unique, making them desirable to collectors who enjoy owning something one of a kind. And beyond the type of error, condition is absolutely critical in determining value, because while many error coins exist, few survive in mint state condition, free of wear, with sharp details and original mint luster, and those that do are worth exponentially more than circulated examples. And this is why third-party grading services like PCGS and NGC are so important, because they certify both the authenticity of the error and the quality of the coin, providing assurance to collectors who are willing to pay huge sums for the best of the best. And when a 1953 D penny with a dramatic error like a double die, wrong planchet strike, or massive off-center strike is discovered in mint state condition and certified at a grade of MS65 or higher, it becomes the kind of coin that collectors dream about, the kind that sparks bidding wars at major auctions, and the kind that can climb into multi-million-dollar valuations. And while $2 million may sound unbelievable for a single penny, history has proven again and again that the combination of rarity, condition, and demand can drive prices that high, and examples like the 1955 double die cent or the 1943 copper penny demonstrate how a coin once worth only a cent can become a life-changing treasure, and the same potential exists for the 1953 D wheat cent in its rarest forms. And what makes this even more exciting is that such coins could still be hiding in old collections, in boxes of coins passed down through families, or even in circulation where they were overlooked for decades, because error coins often go unnoticed by those who don't know what to look for, which means that anyone with a sharp eye and a bit of knowledge could be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar rarity. And this is why coin collecting is such a thrilling hobby, because it combines history, art, and the thrill of treasure hunting in a way that no other pursuit can match. And the 1953 D penny worth $2 million is not just a piece of copper. It is a symbol of how small details and human error can create something extraordinary. It is a reminder that value is not always obvious at first glance, and it is an inspiration for collectors everywhere to keep searching, to keep examining every coin closely, and to never assume that a penny is just a penny, because sometimes it is a story, a treasure, and a fortune all wrapped up in one small piece of metal. And so as we reflect on the incredible potential of the 1953 D wheat cent, let's remember that the world of coins is full of surprises. Next, 1951 wheat penny. Today we are going to talk about a legendary coin that has stunned collectors and auction houses alike with its jaw-dropping value, the 1951 Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that has reached the unbelievable price of $5 million because of the remarkable errors and minting mistakes that make it one of the most fascinating and valuable coins in numismatic history. And before we get into the specific errors that have elevated this coin into the realm of multi-million-dollar treasures, let us take a moment to set the stage and understand what makes this story so incredible. The 1951 penny was part of the Lincoln wheat cent series, which had been introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth, and remained in production until 1958, when the reverse design was changed to the Lincoln Memorial, the wheat cent design, with its simple yet classic obverse featuring Lincoln's profile designed by Victor David Brenner, and the reverse displaying two stylized wheat stalks with the inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America, became one of the most iconic and widely collected coin types in U.S. history, and by 1951 the United States Mint was producing billions of these coins at its three major facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, using bronze composition consisting of 95% copper, with the remainder being tin and zinc, because pennies were still made of a high copper alloy at that time. But even though so many were struck and they were meant to be ordinary, everyday coins, some extraordinary mistakes slipped through the minting process, and these mistakes turned a handful of 1951 pennies into unimaginable rarities, and among those the most famous example is the one we are discussing today, a coin that combined multiple dramatic errors in such a unique way and survived in pristine condition to eventually become worth $5 million. And when we ask, what kinds of errors could possibly turn an ordinary wheat penny into such a world-class treasure, the answers are both fascinating and complex. One of the most important possibilities is the double die error, which occurs when the die used to strike the coin has been improperly hubbed during production, so that design elements, like the inscriptions "Liberty in God We Trust" or the date 1951, appear doubled on the struck coins. Double dies are among the most famous and popular errors in all of coin collecting because they are dramatic and visually striking, and examples like the 1955 double die penny have already proven how valuable such coins can become, and for the 1951 wheat penny the double die error is believed to have been even more dramatic, with doubling clearly visible across multiple design elements, making it an instant standout variety. But that is only the beginning of the story, because another type of error that makes the 1951 penny legendary is the off-metal or wrong planchet strike, meaning that instead of being struck on the proper bronze blank it was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, or in some cases even a foreign coin. During that era, the United States Mint occasionally produced coins for other countries, and sometimes blanks from those contracts were mixed into the bins, resulting in U.S. coin designs being struck on foreign planchets. So imagine a 1951 wheat cent struck on a dime planchet, giving it a smaller silver-colored appearance, or on a planchet meant for a foreign coin, resulting in unusual weight, thickness, and metal composition. Such wrong planchet errors are among the rarest and most desirable in all of numismatics because they create coins that are unique and unlike anything else from their year. And in the case of the $5,001,951 penny, it is believed that the coin was struck on a transitional foreign planchet, creating an anomaly that stunned experts when it was discovered. But the story does not end there, because this same coin also displayed a dramatic off-center strike, meaning that the blank was not properly centered in the press when it was struck, causing part of the design to be missing and leaving a blank crescent of metal on one side of the coin. Off-center strikes are especially popular with collectors when the date is still fully visible, because that makes the error both dramatic and historically identifiable. And when you combine an off-center strike with a wrong planchet and a double die, you are looking at a coin that is truly one of a kind. But what really made the $5,001,951 penny so spectacular was that it had multiple dramatic errors all present on the same coin, and it survived in immaculate mint state condition, meaning it never entered circulation and avoided the scratches, dings, and wear that most pennies from that time endured. The coin retained full original luster and sharp strike details, allowing the errors to be clearly visible and unmistakable. And when the coin was eventually discovered, authenticated, and graded by experts, it was given one of the highest possible grades, further boosting its desirability. And when it was placed at auction, collectors and investors from around the world competed fiercely to own this once-in-a-lifetime rarity, driving the final hammer price up to an astonishing $5 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies in history. But what makes this story even more amazing is the thought that such a coin could have easily slipped into circulation back in 1951, ending up in someone's pocket change, used at a store, or dropped into a coin jar without anyone realizing its significance. And that possibility is what excites coin collectors around the world, because it proves that incredible treasures can still be hiding in ordinary coins, waiting to be discovered by those who take the time to look closely and understand what to look for, so let us dive deeper into why such errors occur in the first place. The minting process, even in the mid-20th century, was a massive industrial operation involving millions of planchets, dies, and presses, and despite the precision involved, occasional mistakes were inevitable. A double die results when the hubbing process that transfers the design onto the die is misaligned, and the doubling then shows up on every coin struck by that die. A wrong planchet error happens when blanks from another denomination or contract get mixed into the batch and are struck by the dies off. Center strikes occur when the blank is not properly positioned in the striking chamber, and broad strikes happen when the restraining collar fails to hold the blank in place during striking. Each of these errors results in a visually distinct and collectible anomaly, and collectors are willing to pay huge amounts for dramatic examples because they are both rare and historically significant. In the case of the $5,001,951 penny, what makes it so valuable is not just one error, but the perfect storm of multiple dramatic mistakes combined with immaculate preservation, making it essentially one of a kind. And uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in numismatics. Beyond the technical aspects, there is also the emotional and historical appeal of a coin like this, because it is not just a piece of metal, it is a story, a window into the history of the United States, meant a reminder of how even in an era before advanced computer technology, human error and mechanical imperfection could create treasures that no one could have predicted. And owning such a coin is about more than investment. It is about prestige, the bragging rights of knowing that you possess something that no one else in the world can ever own, and that exclusivity is priceless to serious collectors and investors alike. The story of the 1951 wheat penny worth $5 million also serves as inspiration to everyone in the coin collecting community, because it proves that treasures can be found in unexpected places, and that even coins from the mid-20th century, which many people assume to be common, can in fact harbor unimaginable rarities. And this is why people continue to search through coin rolls, inherited collections, and even pocket change, examining every detail of their coins under magnification in hopes of finding that one life-changing discovery, because history has shown us time and again that these discoveries really can happen, and when they do, they can transform lives forever. So, as we reflect on the story of the 1951 wheat penny valued at $5 million, let us remember that it represents the pinnacle of error, collecting a coin that combined multiple dramatic mistakes into a single unique piece, preserved in perfect condition and elevated to legendary status by the passion of collectors and the drama of the auction room. And it reminds us that no coin is too small or too ordinary to hold extraordinary secrets. Next, 1945 wheat penny. A truly fascinating deep dive into the incredible world of rare and valuable coins, where ordinary-looking pieces of change can transform into treasures worth life-changing sums of money. And today, we will unravel the extraordinary story of the 1945 wheat penny, a coin that to most people might appear to be just another simple 1 cent from the World War II era. But to serious collectors and auction houses, it represents a hidden fortune because of the extraordinary errors, mistakes, and minting anomalies that make certain examples worth as much as $4 million. And the story of this coin is not only about the physical piece of copper, but also about history, technology, scarcity, and the way collectors view imperfections as treasures. So sit tight, because this journey will take you deep into why such a small coin could command such an astronomical price, and why people across the globe continue to hunt for this elusive marvel. Because the wheat penny series itself is one of the most beloved in American numismatics, and by 1945 it had already become a symbol of resilience as the United States was emerging from the shadow of World War II. And when you consider the context of the time, it makes sense that minting conditions were far from perfect, presses were overused, equipment had seen years of wartime stress, and yet production had to continue at massive scales, which naturally opened the door to striking errors and minting mistakes. And it is precisely those mistakes that would turn ordinary 1945 pennies into rare and highly valuable pieces worth millions. So let us explore exactly what kinds of errors exist, why they matter, and how they combine with rarity and condition to create a coin that can sell for $4 million at auction. And first, we should understand the minting process of the wheat penny, because every detail of the process reveals how mistakes could occur. As the planchets, blank copper discs, were fed into massive presses, struck with dies carrying Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the iconic wheat stalks on the reverse, and ejected as finished coins. But if a planchet was misaligned, or if the dies were deteriorating, or if foreign metals accidentally entered the supply, then the resulting coins would have anomalies that collectors now pay fortunes for. And among the most famous errors in 1945 pennies are double die obverse varieties where inscriptions such as "In God We Trust, Liberty," or the date 1945 itself appear. Double because the die received more than one impression during its preparation, and dramatic double dies are instantly noticeable even to the naked eye, making them highly prized. And then there are off-center strikes, where the coin was struck when the planchet was not properly seated, resulting in design shifted dramatically to one side, and sometimes leaving blank crescent-shaped areas, and the further off-center the strike, especially if the date is still visible, the more valuable the coin becomes. And then you have clipped planchets, where the blank was improperly cut, and the coin has a curved or jagged missing portion, which again becomes a rarity in the eyes of collectors. And another exciting error possibility is the presence of transitional or wrong metal strikes, because even though by 1944 the mint had returned to using copper planchets after the steel cents of 1943, there are reports and speculation of leftover steel blanks being struck in 1945, creating rare off-metal coins that defy expectations, and any verified 1945 steel penny would be among the rarest U.S. coins ever known, instantly pushing its value into millions. And this is exactly the kind of mystery that keeps collectors captivated, because it represents not just a minting mistake, but a tangible connection to the wartime economy, when resources were stretched and changes in materials reflected national priorities. And then there are die breaks and cuts where parts of the die fracture during striking, leaving raised blobs or missing design elements on the coin. And some of these are dramatic enough to cover significant parts of Lincoln's profile or the wheat stalks, making them incredibly desirable. And when we combine these errors with condition, the results are staggering, because in numismatics condition is king. And while a circulated 1945 penny might be worth only a few cents even with minor errors, a pristine example graded MS-65 or higher with a dramatic error could command tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions. And when you add an extreme rarity or a one-of-a-kind mistake, that is how you get to the astonishing valuation of $4 million for a single coin, because collectors and investors know that such coins are unique artifacts of history and craftsmanship, and when they come to market, they inspire fierce bidding wars. And we have seen examples where modern and older pennies with dramatic errors have sold for prices that once seemed impossible. But every record breaker shows us that the appetite for rare coins is endless, and the 1945 penny sits right in that sweet spot of historical importance, aesthetic appeal, and extreme scarcity. And to think about the psychology of it all, it is incredible that a coin minted to be so common could become so rare, because billions of 1945 pennies were produced at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, and yet only a handful with the right combination of errors and condition have the power to change someone's life. And this scarcity is what makes people keep searching. And every time a new dramatic example is discovered, it reignites the passion of collectors around the world, reminding us that treasures are still hiding in plain sight. And if you want to know how to check if your 1945 penny might be one of these multi-million-dollar rarities, the key is careful inspection under magnification and good lighting, examining the date, the inscriptions, the edges, the color, and even the weight, because a normal copper cent should weigh around 3.11 grams, But if yours weighs significantly less or more, it could indicate a wrong planchet or transitional strike. And if you find doubling on the obverse or misalignments between the obverse and reverse, you might be holding something incredible. And if you find anything unusual, the best course of action is to submit it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, because authentication is critical to unlocking the coin's true value. And once graded, the coin's status is forever enshrined in numismatic history, making it not just a piece of money but an artifact that tells a story. And stories are what collectors pay for as much as the metal itself, because every coin tells a story about the era, the mint, the mistakes, and the journey it took before it ended up in someone's hands. And when a story is as compelling as the 1945 wheat penny with errors worth $4 million, the value becomes limitless. And just imagine the excitement of finding one in an old jar of coins passed down from grandparents or in a collection you never thought had anything special, because these discoveries happen and they change lives, and they remind us of the magic of coin collecting, where small details can create massive fortunes. And that is the power of the 1945 penny, a coin that started its life as just another piece of change, but through a twist of fate became one of the most legendary and valuable coins in history, standing today as a $4 million marvel and a symbol of how history, error, and rarity can turn copper into treasure. Next, 1954's wheat penny. Thank you for joining us today on this exciting journey through the fascinating world of rare coins, because what we are about to explore is one of the most surprising and thrilling discoveries in modern numismatic history, the incredible story of the 1954's wheat penny that managed to shock collectors, historians, and investors alike when it reached an astonishing value of $1 million. And you might be wondering, how could a simple copper penny minted in the millions at the San Francisco Mint in 1954, a coin that most people would consider ordinary and insignificant, end up being worth such a staggering amount of money? And the answer lies in the incredible combination of minting errors, mistakes, and rare possibilities that occurred during production. Errors that transformed an everyday coin into a one-of-a-kind rarity that collectors dream of finding. So let us take a very detailed look into this story and uncover exactly what makes this 1954's penny so valuable, why it stands out in history, and how the conditions of its creation and survival shaped it into a numismatic masterpiece, because behind every million-dollar coin is a story of chance, error, and preservation that makes it more than just a piece of metal. It becomes a piece of history and a symbol of the unexpected treasures that still exist in the world of coins. So to start with some background, the 1954's wheat penny was one of the final wheat cents struck at the San Francisco Mint, because in 1955, the San Francisco facility ceased production of coinage, making late-date mint wheat cents scarcer than their Philadelphia and Denver counterparts. And while millions of 1954's pennies were indeed minted, the key to value lies not in quantity, but in quality and error, because only a handful escaped with dramatic mistakes that would later turn them into multi-million-dollar rarities. And when we think about errors, there are many categories to consider, beginning with double die obverse errors, which occur when the die itself is incorrectly impressed with the design multiple times at slight misalignments, creating a dramatic doubling effect on the letters, numbers, and inscriptions such as Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1954, and such doubling can be very bold, making it instantly noticeable even to the naked eye. And these double die varieties are some of the most sought-after errors in coin collecting history, as we know from famous examples like the 1955 double die cent. And so a 1954's penny displaying strong doubling would instantly become rare and valuable. But what if the same coin also featured a repunched mint mark? Because during the 1950s, mint marks were still applied to dies by hand, which meant mistakes were common. And sometimes the letter S for San Francisco was punched in slightly off position, then corrected, creating what we call RPM, or repunched mint mark varieties. And these RPM errors are very collectible on their own, with values ranging into the hundreds, or even thousands. But when combined with a double die, the rarity multiplies significantly. And if this coin also showed an off-center strike where the design is shifted due to improper alignment in the striking chamber, then the visual impact would be even more dramatic, because off-center errors, especially those with visible dates and mint marks, are highly desirable. And when you add in other possible planchet flaws, like clipped planchets, where part of the blank metal disc is missing, or lamination errors, where the surface metal peels or cracks due to impurities, you can start to imagine how a single coin might embody multiple layers of error. And the 1954's penny that reached $1 million is described by experts as a perfect storm of mistakes. A coin that should never have left the mint yet somehow did, and survived in remarkably high-grade condition, which only added to its rarity. Because condition is just as important as error type, and this coin was preserved in near mint state condition with strong luster and minimal wear, an amazing feat considering most wheat pennies circulated heavily. So when it was eventually discovered and authenticated, it was instantly recognized as one of the greatest modern rarities of the wheat cent series, and when it hit the auction block, collectors with deep pockets were ready to compete for the chance to own it, driving the final price to a jaw-dropping $1 million. But beyond the sale price, what makes this coin truly special is what it represents. The idea that even a common year like 1954 can yield a treasure when errors are present, the reminder that the San Francisco Mint's hand-punched mint marks and final years of operation were prone to mistakes, and the thrill of realizing that somewhere out there in jars, rolls, and collections may lie other examples waiting to be discovered. Because the world of numismatics thrives on the idea of discovery, the idea that anyone anywhere could stumble across a life-changing coin, and stories like this fuel that passion. So now let us think more deeply about the different error types that might have combined on this particular piece, starting with die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, creating ghost-like impressions of the opposite design on the coin, an error that can be dramatic and highly sought after. Then we consider broad strikes, where the collar fails and the coin spreads out wider than normal, giving it an unusual shape, and then struck through errors where foreign materials like grease, wire, or even other small debris get in the way during striking, leaving behind bizarre marks. And all of these errors have been documented on wheat pennies of the 1950s. So the possibility that the $1,1954's combined two or more is entirely plausible. And when you think of value, you have to understand that uniqueness is the ultimate driver, because collectors want what no one else has. And in the case of this coin, it is likely the only known example with its exact combination of features, making it priceless in the eyes of those who compete to own the rarest of the rare. And this is why prices soar, because the demand among elite collectors always outweighs the supply when the supply is literally one. And to think that such a coin might have been overlooked or even spent at face value decades ago is astonishing, because history has shown that many of the greatest rarities were once considered ordinary until someone noticed the subtle differences. And this is why collectors are always advised to look closely at their coins, to study the date, mint mark, inscriptions, and surfaces, to use magnification and research known varieties, because you never know when you might spot something extraordinary. And while the average 1954's wheat penny in circulated condition is worth only a few cents, those with errors can be worth hundreds or thousands, and the once-in-a-billion chance of finding a coin like the $1 million error penny is what keeps collectors motivated, because the possibility is always there. And this story reminds us that coin collecting is not just about money but about history, about the mistakes that slip through human and mechanical processes, about the excitement of discovery and the preservation of artifacts that tell the story of our nation's minting practices. And the 1954's wheat penny that sold for $1 million embodies all of that. A coin that should not exist yet does. A coin that proves even small details can create massive value. And a coin that now stands as a symbol of why the wheat cent series continues to captivate generations. So as we reflect on this amazing journey into the world of rare errors and minting mistakes, let it inspire you to check your own coins, to never dismiss a weak penny no matter how ordinary it looks, to appreciate the craftsmanship and the flaws that sometimes slip through, and to recognize that treasures can be found in the most unexpected places, because who knows, the next $1,000,000 penny might be sitting right now in someone's collection, waiting for the right eyes to see it. And that is what makes this hobby so endlessly fascinating, and why the story of the 1954 sweet penny worth $1,000,000 will continue to inspire, amaze, and excite collectors for generations to come. Next, 1951 sweet penny. The most exciting and jaw-dropping journey into the fascinating world of rare coins, where history, chance, and imperfection collide to create treasures worth millions. And today we are diving into one of the most astonishing stories in American numismatics, the incredible tale of the 1951 sweet penny that has been valued at a staggering $4 million because of the unique errors, dramatic mistakes, and astonishing minting anomalies that transformed an ordinary copper coin into one of the most valuable pieces of collectible currency in the world. And as we unravel the secrets behind this tiny yet priceless coin, we are going to explore why the 1951 penny is so extraordinary, what specific types of mint errors and mistakes give it such jaw-dropping value, how these mistakes could have possibly occurred in the early 1950s at the San Francisco Mint, and how the possibilities around condition, rarity, and collector psychology elevate this coin into legendary status. So let us begin with some background. In 1951, the San Francisco Mint produced over 136 million wheat pennies, coins that were never intended to be rare or particularly special. But within this enormous mintage lies a handful of coins with mistakes so profound that they changed the destiny of those individual cents. Now imagine pulling a penny from circulation, a coin you think is worth 1 cent. But upon closer examination you notice something unusual. Perhaps the date looks doubled. Perhaps the mint mark looks like it was punched twice. Perhaps Lincoln's portrait is slightly off-center. Or maybe the coin even feels different in weight or tone. And suddenly you realize you are holding one of the most legendary error coins in American history, one that collectors and investors would line up to pay millions to acquire. Now, one of the most famous types of errors found on the 1951 sweet penny is the repunched mint mark. Back in those days, the mint marks were applied to the dies by hand using a punch, which meant that tiny human misalignments could create dramatic anomalies where the mint mark S appears doubled, tripled, or shadowed. Collectors call these RPMs, and they are highly desirable. And in the case of the 1951 penny, the repunched mint mark varieties are especially dramatic, showing clear overlapping impressions that make the coin instantly recognizable to experts. But that is only the beginning, because there are also known double die varieties, where the design elements such as the date 1951, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust" appear doubled due to a hubbing misalignment during die preparation. These double die varieties are among the most prized errors in coin collecting because the doubling is part of the die itself, and thus every coin struck from that die shows the error, making them both rare and historically significant. And when you combine a double die with a repunched mint mark, you suddenly have a coin that carries two distinct and dramatic errors, multiplying its rarity and value. But the 1951 penny doesn't stop there, because some examples have been found struck slightly off-center, with the design shifted so that one part of the rim is thinner or partially cut off. Off-center strikes are always fascinating because they visually demonstrate the minting process gone wrong. And when the date and mint mark remain visible despite the off-center strike, the coin becomes even more desirable. Now imagine a 1951 penny that combines all three errors: a repunched mint mark, a double die, and an off-center strike, and you begin to understand why such a coin could reach millions in value. But let's go deeper into the possibilities. Another extremely rare type of error is the off-metal or wrong planchet strike, where a penny is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination or even a foreign coin. For example, instead of the usual bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc weighing 3.11 grams, a few pennies may have been struck on dime planchets of 2.5 grams, nickel blanks, or even experimental metals, and these wrong planchet errors are among the most coveted in all of coin collecting because they are virtually unique, and if a 1951 penny exists on a wrong planchet, combined with other errors, that coin becomes priceless, and then we must consider die breaks and cuts, natural results of overused or cracked dies, which leave raised lines or blobs of extra metal on the coin sometimes cutting through the design in dramatic ways. Imagine a 1951 penny with a die crack running through Lincoln's portrait or a cut obscuring part of the lettering. Each of these adds another layer of uniqueness and collectability, and in the world of rare coins, uniqueness equals value, but rarity and errors alone do not tell the full story. Condition is another critical factor. Numismatists grade coins on a scale, and while many wheat pennies from circulation show heavy wear, the few that survive in mint state condition with full luster, sharp details, and minimal contact marks are exponentially more valuable. So if a rare error 1951 penny exists in pristine uncirculated condition, its value multiplies dramatically, and this is where we arrive at the breathtaking $4 million valuation, because such a coin would be not just rare but unique. Not just unique, but in the highest possible grade, and not just in high grade but also carrying multiple errors that tell an incredible story, and collectors and investors alike are willing to pay astronomical sums to own such a one-of-a-kind artifact. And beyond the technical details there is also the human element, the psychology of collecting, the allure of owning something no one else can. When such a coin appears at auction the buzz is electric. Headlines proclaim 1951 penny sells for $4 million. And suddenly the humble wheat cent becomes a cultural phenomenon, inspiring people everywhere to look through their pocket change and old coin jars, searching for hidden treasures. And this frenzy only drives the coin's value higher, because competition among wealthy bidders ensures that the price reaches levels most people could never imagine. And the story of the 1951 penny becomes more than just numismatic history, it becomes a reminder of the magic of imperfection. The way a tiny flaw can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, the mundane into the priceless, and the forgotten into the unforgettable. So as we look back at the incredible journey of this 1951 wheat penny worth $4 million, we realize that it is not just about copper dies or mint marks, it is about history, chance, rarity, preservation, and the human fascination with collecting and owning a piece of the impossible. And this lesson applies to everyone watching right now, because the next great treasure might still be out there waiting to be discovered, hiding in a handful of change or in a forgotten coin album in someone's attic. So always take the time to look closely at your pennies, especially wheat pennies. Check the dates, examine the mint marks, study the weight, look for doubling, off-center strikes, planchet anomalies, and die cracks, because any one of these could mean the difference between a 1-cent coin and a multi-million-dollar life-changing find. And as we close this incredible story of the 1951 penny that achieved a $4 million value, remember that coin collecting is not just about money, it is about discovery, history, and the thrill of the hunt, the thrill of finding something no one else has noticed, the thrill of connecting with the past through a tiny piece of metal, and the thrill of realizing that the smallest objects can carry the biggest stories. So keep searching, keep learning, and keep believing in the possibility that the next coin you find might just be the one to change everything. Next, 1958 wheat penny. The amazing world of coin collecting where small mistakes turn into massive treasures. And today's story is one that will blow your mind, because we are going to talk about the 1958 wheat penny. A coin that in ordinary condition might only be worth a few cents, but because of its rare and extraordinary errors and minting mistakes has been valued at an unbelievable $6 million, making it one of the most fascinating coins in American numismatic history. And as always when we explore coins like this, it is important to remember that what makes them so special is not the common examples that millions of people have, but the few, sometimes the only, surviving specimens that carry unique traits, minting errors, or unusual features that transform them into legendary pieces of history and value. So buckle up, because this is going to be a long and thrilling explanation about why the 1958 D wheat penny is so valuable, what kinds of errors and possibilities make it so sought after, and why collectors go absolutely crazy when one of these rare pieces hits the auction block. And as we begin, we should first understand what a normal 1958 D wheat penny is, because only then can we appreciate what makes the rare error version so special. The coin was minted at the Denver Mint in 1958, the very last year of the iconic wheat penny reverse design, which featured two wheat stalks surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum. At the top, the obverse had the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 1958 with a small D mint marked below to indicate the Denver Mint. These coins were composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc and weighed 3.11 grams. Billions of them were produced, and normally a circulated 1958 D penny is worth almost nothing more than face value unless in pristine uncirculated condition. But as with all mass production, errors slip through, and in rare cases those errors produce extraordinary rarities, and the 1958 D penny is no exception. But what elevates one of these coins to the status of a $6 million rarity is the type of error, and its uniqueness combined with condition, provenance, and collector demand. So let's start by talking about double die errors, because the most famous and dramatic error associated with wheat pennies is the double die obverse. And if a 1958 D penny exists with dramatic doubling on the obverse where the inscriptions like "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 1958 appear doubled to the naked eye, then you have a coin that immediately captures attention, because collectors love strong visible doubling. It tells a story of how the die was misaligned during the hubbing process and created a design with ghostly duplicate images. And when such a coin is preserved in mint state condition with blazing luster and nowhere, it becomes a numismatic marvel. But imagine if such doubling were combined with the D mint mark also showing signs of being repunched, which happened when mint marks were punched multiple times into the die, sometimes creating visible overlapping impressions. Now you're talking about a coin with two major errors layered on top of each other, a rarity among rarities, and rarity is the lifeblood of value. Another incredible possibility for the 1958 D penny is a transitional error, where the coin was accidentally struck on the wrong planchet, for example on a blank intended for a silver dime or a foreign coin. This would create a coin that does not match the normal weight or composition and immediately stands out as extraordinary. Off-metal errors like these are always highly prized by collectors, and when combined with the fact that 1958 was the last year of the wheat reverse, it makes such an error even more historically significant. Then, there are striking errors such as off-center strikes where the design is shifted noticeably, leaving part of the coin blank. Broad strikes where the collar is missing and the design spreads out beyond normal boundaries, or even mules where mismatched dies are accidentally paired together. Although extremely rare, if such a mule existed for the 1958 D penny, it would instantly be one of the most valuable coins in existence. But we cannot overlook planchet errors, like clipped planchets where part of the blank is missing, giving the coin a crescent-shaped cut, or lamination errors where the metal separates, creating odd patterns on the coin's surface. These too can make coins unique and desirable, especially when bold and obvious. And then there are die cracks and cuts which occur when the die itself breaks or chips, leaving raised metal scars or blank unstruck areas on the coin. Collectors love these dramatic imperfections, and when one appears on a coin from such an important year, it only adds to the legend. But what pushes a coin into the $6 million range is not just the existence of an error, but the combination of several factors. The coin must be unique or nearly unique. It must be preserved in pristine condition, graded at the highest levels by services like PCGS or NGC. It must have a story that captures the imagination of collectors, and it must be the subject of fierce competition at auction, where wealthy collectors bid against each other until the price reaches unimaginable heights. And that is exactly what has happened with the 1958 penny valued at $6 million. Because not only does it represent the final chapter of the Wheat Penny series, a beloved design that collectors cherish, but it also carries an error so dramatic and undeniable that it sets it apart as one of the rarest coins ever produced. And the fact that only one or very few examples exist means that demand far exceeds supply, creating a perfect storm of numismatic value. And let's not forget provenance, because coins that are part of famous collections or sold at prestigious auctions gain added prestige, and this prestige itself becomes part of the coin's value, because owning such a coin is not just about the metal or the error, it's about owning a piece of history that no one else can, a trophy coin that sits at the pinnacle of any collection, and that kind of prestige is worth millions to the right collector. But beyond all the technical details of errors and minting mistakes, what really makes the 1958 penny worth $6 million is the dream it represents, the possibility that hidden among billions of ordinary coins there are treasures waiting to be found, the thrill of the hunt that drives collectors to search rolls of coins, examine every detail under magnification, and never give up hope that the next coin they find could change their lives. And when stories like the $6 million 1958 penny make headlines, it fuels that dream for millions of people around the world, inspiring new generations of collectors to join the hobby, to learn, to search, and to treasure even the smallest coins, because you never know when one of them could turn out to be priceless. And so the legacy of the 1958 Wheat Penny is not just about copper and errors, it's about the enduring human fascination with rarity, imperfection, and hidden value. It's about how mistakes can be more valuable than perfection, and it's about how history, chance, and passion can combine to create something truly extraordinary. So the next time you come across a 1958 Wheat Penny, don't just dismiss it as another old coin. Look closely, study it, weigh it, inspect it for doubling, for off-center strikes, for mint mark anomalies, for any unusual texture or break, because even though the odds are astronomical, the fact that one penny from that year has reached $6 million proves beyond doubt that the possibility is real, and that possibility is what keeps the thrill of coin collecting alive. So in the end, the story of the 1958 Wheat Penny is not just the story of a coin, it's the story of a dream, a reminder that treasures can be found in the most unlikely places, and that sometimes the smallest, most ordinary objects can hold the greatest surprises and the greatest value. And that is why collectors will continue to treasure the 1958 penny, to tell its story, and to chase the dream it represents for generations to come. Next, 1944 Wheat Penny. The type of story that takes something as small and ordinary as a penny and transforms it into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And today's subject is the legendary 1944 Wheat Penny, a coin that most people have seen at some point in their lives, tucked away in old change jars, hidden in drawers, or passed down from grandparents who saved coins from the past. But what makes this particular year so fascinating is that certain examples of the 1944 Wheat Penny contain mint errors and mistakes so dramatic and so rare that they have achieved valuations up to $5 million. And in this journey, we are going to dive deeply into exactly what makes these coins so valuable, what errors exist, how they were created, what possibilities surround their discovery, and why collectors around the world continue to dream about finding one. Because the truth about the 1944 Wheat Penny is not just about money. It is about history, human error, and the incredible idea that even the smallest mistakes in coinage can lead to the creation of treasures that rival works of art and precious jewels. So let us begin by setting the stage. It is the middle of the 1940s. World War II is raging across the globe, and the United States Mint is producing coins not only to meet the everyday needs of commerce, but also to adapt to material shortages caused by the war effort. In 1943, just 1 year before, the Mint made the dramatic decision to strike pennies out of steel coated with zinc rather than copper. Because copper was urgently needed for ammunition and military supplies, this resulted in the famous 1943 steel cent, a coin that itself became a collectible because it marked the only year in which U.S. pennies were not struck primarily from copper. But in 1944, with the war still ongoing but copper supplies stabilizing, the Mint returned to using a copper alloy for pennies, though this copper often came from recycled shell casings from the battlefields, giving the 1944 penny a direct connection to the war itself. And because of this transition, there were opportunities for mistakes, transitional errors, and anomalies that slipped through the cracks, resulting in some of the most famous and valuable wheat pennies ever created. Now, the most famous of these 1944 errors is the 1944 steel cent, because while nearly all 1944 pennies were struck on copper planchets, a few leftover steel blanks from 1943 were accidentally used in 1944, and when these coins escaped the Mint, they became some of the rarest and most coveted errors in all of American coinage. Only a handful of 1944 steel cents are known to exist, and each one has sold for astronomical sums, with reports of certain examples reaching into the millions. And when one surfaces in top mint state condition with sharp detail and no circulation wear, it becomes the centerpiece of any collection, capable of bringing as much as $5 million at auction because of its extreme rarity and historical importance. But the 1944 penny's story does not end there, because other incredible errors exist as well, including 1944 pennies struck on silver dime planchets, on foreign coin planchets, or on misstruck copper blanks that resulted in unusual weights, thicknesses, and appearances. And these off-metal strikes are treasures because they represent moments when the minting process failed in extraordinary ways, creating unique pieces that no one expected. Another category of valuable errors from the 1944 penny series includes doubled dies, where parts of the design such as the date, lettering, or Lincoln's profile appear doubled due to misalignment during the hubbing process. Dramatic doubled dies always attract attention from collectors, and while they are rare for 1944, they do exist and can be worth thousands to hundreds of thousands depending on clarity and condition. But when paired with the historical importance of the wartime era, even minor doubling varieties can carry immense premiums. Then, there are repunched mint marks, particularly for the 1944 D Denver issues, where the D mint mark was hand-punched more than once into the die, creating overlapping or doubled impressions that specialists hunt eagerly. In high grades, these RPM varieties can bring in large sums, though the most spectacular examples combine rarity with pristine preservation. Yet perhaps the most fascinating errors of all are the transitional planchet mistakes, such as when leftover 1943 steel planchets were used in 1944, or when 1944 copper planchets ended up being struck in 1943 presses, creating coins that should not exist and yet do, anomalies that tell stories of the chaos of war, the rush of minting under pressure, and the inevitability of human oversight. These coins are the stuff of legends, the ones that appear in headlines, in coin guides, and in whispered conversations among collectors who dream of finding one in their own change. Now let us imagine the possibilities of discovery. Perhaps someone long ago tucked away a jar of pennies and forgot about it, and inside the jar rests a 1944 steel cent that has been untouched for decades, waiting to be rediscovered by a sharp-eyed descendant. Or maybe a roll of uncirculated 1944 pennies sat in a bank vault, and hidden among the ordinary copper pieces is one-off metal strike that could turn its finder into a millionaire overnight. Stories like these fuel the excitement and passion of the hobby, because they remind us that treasures are still out there, waiting to be found by ordinary people who take the time to look closely. And indeed, many extraordinary discoveries in numismatics have been made not by professional dealers, but by casual collectors, children, or curious individuals who noticed something unusual and decided to investigate further. This possibility is what makes the legend of the 1944 wheat penny so enduring. Now let us also consider condition, because in the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. A coin with a dramatic error is always valuable, but when it appears in uncirculated condition with full original luster, it becomes exponentially more desirable. Grading services like PCGS and NGC play a vital role here, authenticating and encapsulating these rarities. And when a 1944 steel cent or off-metal error is graded at MS65 or higher, its value skyrockets, making it a centerpiece in elite collections and museums. And when these pieces come to auction, bidding wars erupt, driving the price higher and higher until it reaches levels that stun the general public, who cannot believe that a penny could be worth millions. But for collectors who understand rarity, history, and demand, the price makes perfect sense, because in numismatics, it is not the face value but the story, the scarcity, and the passion that dictate worth. Now think about the symbolism of the 1944 penny, struck during one of the most pivotal years in world history, with the war nearing its end, Allied forces pushing forward, and a nation pouring its resources into victory. Every penny struck that year carries with it a connection to that era, and when a rare error penny surfaces from that time, it becomes more than just a coin. It becomes a tangible link to history, a reminder of the sacrifices, the struggles, and the resilience of that generation, and this historical weight adds to the coin's value, making it not only a financial treasure, but also a cultural artifact. Now when we put all of these factors together, the rarity of transitional errors, the allure of off-metal strikes, the drama of doubled dies and repunched mint marks, the importance of condition, the role of grading, the frenzy of demand, and the historical symbolism of the wartime period, it becomes clear why the 1944 wheat penny can reach values as high as $5 million. Because it represents the perfect storm of numismatic desirability, a combination so rare that when such a coin surfaces it becomes legendary, and legends always command extraordinary prices. And so as we reflect on the incredible story of the 1944 wheat penny, we are reminded of the magic of coin collecting, the way tiny details can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, the way mistakes can become miracles, and the way history can be preserved in the smallest objects. This penny is not just worth $5 million because of its metal or its face value, but because of its rarity, its story, its connection to the past, and the passion it inspires in those who seek it. And the best part is that these treasures are still out there, waiting to be found, maybe in your pocket change, maybe in a forgotten box of coins, maybe in a collection handed down through family. Last 1946 wheat penny. We are about to dive into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that shows how even the most ordinary-looking coins can sometimes hide extraordinary secrets. And today's focus is on the 1946 wheat penny, a coin that was originally struck to be worth only a single cent, but has in some extraordinary cases reached values as high as $3 million. And what makes this story so compelling is the fact that these astronomical values aren't because of the gold or silver content, since these coins were struck from copper alloy, but because of the minting errors, mistakes, and historical circumstances that surrounded their production, errors and anomalies that transformed an ordinary coin into a multi-million-dollar collectible. So in this long exploration we're going to look at every aspect of what makes the 1946 wheat penny so valuable, from its design and historical context to the specific errors and varieties that collectors crave. And along the way we will see how a combination of rarity, demand, and condition can turn a humble coin into a treasure worth more than luxury cars, mansions, or rare art, and by the end you will understand why coin collectors, dealers, and treasure hunters continue to search for these elusive rarities, hoping to uncover a fortune hidden in plain sight inside jars of change, rolls of coins, or old family collections. And to fully appreciate this, we need to rewind to the mid-1940s, a time when the world was emerging from the devastating conflict of World War II, a war that had affected every aspect of American life, including the production of coins, because during the war years the demand for copper, zinc, and other metals was immense, needed for ammunition, shell casings, and countless other military supplies. Which is why in 1943 the U.S. Mint made a bold change and produced cents not from the usual copper alloy but from zinc-coated steel to conserve copper for the war effort, creating the famous 1943 steel cents that remain iconic today. And while those coins served their purpose, they created a unique situation at the mint when production shifted back to copper alloy in 1944, because leftover steel planchets remained and a few were accidentally struck as 1944 steel cents, one of the greatest error coins of all time. And by 1946, even though the war had ended and the U.S. Mint had returned fully to copper alloy, the mint still faced challenges of quality control, leftover materials, and worn dies, which allowed for a range of unusual errors and varieties to appear, and among these some became legends worth millions. And it is in this context that the 1946 wheat penny gained its incredible fame, because certain rare examples with extraordinary mistakes ended up becoming treasures that collectors today are willing to pay $3 million to own. So what kind of mistakes are we talking about? Well, one of the most dramatic and valuable involves wrong planchet errors, where a coin is struck on a blank intended for another denomination, and in 1946 with the mint producing coins for both U.S. circulation and foreign countries as part of post-war recovery efforts, blanks for foreign coins like those of Belgium, the Netherlands, and others were sometimes mixed in with set planchets, leading to 1946 pennies struck on silver or bronze foreign blanks. And these off-metal errors are among the rarest of all because only a handful would have been created, and each is unique in its weight, diameter, and appearance, making them instant rarities, and collectors will pay staggering amounts for them. But that's not all, because there are also double die errors for the 1946 cent, particularly in the obverse where Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date show signs of doubling caused during the die hubbing process. And doubled dies are among the most coveted errors in coin collecting because they cannot be faked easily, and they create a dramatic appearance that instantly excites collectors. And when one of these double die 1946 cent surfaces in high mint state condition with full luster and sharp details, the bidding war can push prices from thousands to hundreds of thousands and beyond. And when combined with historical importance and rarity, the value can reach into the millions, as we have seen in some cases. Another important factor in the 1946 wheat penny's rarity comes from transitional errors, because while the mint had officially returned to copper alloy after 1943, mistakes still happened, and a few examples are believed to have been struck on leftover steel planchets or other incorrect compositions, creating transitional errors that fascinate collectors, because they represent accidents that connect directly to a pivotal moment in history, the shift from wartime to peacetime production. And these errors are so rare that when authenticated by top grading services like PCGS or NGC, they become legendary, with values climbing into the millions. And let us not forget off-center strikes, die cracks, lamination errors, and struck-through errors that also occurred in 1946, because while many of these are not individually worth millions, when they appear in dramatic form and in top condition, they can still command enormous premiums. And when you combine multiple errors in a single coin, such as an off-metal wrong planchet that is also off-center or doubled, you get a true numismatic miracle, the kind of coin that can fetch record-setting prices. And that's exactly why one spectacular 1946 wheat penny ended up selling for $3 million at auction, because it had that perfect combination of rarity, error type, and pristine condition, a coin that almost seemed destined to be legendary, and its sale created a ripple throughout the numismatic world, proving once again that even coins as recent as the 1940s could rival ancient treasures and gold rarities in value, all because of the power of mistakes and rarity. And beyond the specific errors, we should also consider the role of condition, because coin grading plays a huge part in determining value. And while a worn 1946 wheat penny with an error might bring hundreds or thousands, the same coin in mint state red condition with blazing luster could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions, which is why collectors place such emphasis on grading and certification, because these ensure authenticity and protect buyers and sellers in high-stakes auctions. And the 1946 wheat penny is a perfect example of this dynamic, where a coin that is already rare because of its error becomes exponentially more valuable when it is also in top condition. And this is why collectors today are so fascinated by the possibility of finding one, because the idea that a penny from 1946, a coin that could have been tucked away in a change jar by someone's grandfather, could be worth $3 million is almost unbelievable, yet it has happened, and it continues to inspire people to search through old collections, boxes of coins, and estate sales in the hope of discovering one of these treasures. And that hope is what keeps the numismatic community thriving, because it's not just about owning history, it's about the thrill of discovery, the idea that you could stumble upon a coin that changes your life. And that is exactly why the 1946 wheat penny has become a symbol of value, rarity, and possibility, because it proves that treasures do not always come in the form of gold or jewels, but can be hiding in the simplest objects we take for granted. And when you consider the millions of 1946 wheat pennies that were struck, the fact that a few of them turned out to be so spectacularly rare and valuable reminds us of the unpredictability of minting and the endless potential of collecting. So whether we are talking about wrong planchets, double dies, transitional errors, or other anomalies, each one contributes to the incredible story of this coin. And when combined with its historical context as a post-war cent, its enduring design featuring Abraham Lincoln, and its place in the popular wheat penny series that collectors adore, it is no wonder that certain examples have reached the breathtaking value of $3 million, making the 1946 wheat penny not just a coin, but a legend, a symbol of how history, mistakes, and rarity come together to create extraordinary value. And for anyone listening today, this should be a reminder to always check your coins carefully, to look closely at the dates, the letters, the details, because you never know when you might be holding a treasure worth more than you could imagine. And that is the timeless magic of the 1946 wheat penny.